Welcome everyone, and a good Erev Shabbos as we go from Rosh Chodesh to Erev Shabbos, and we are now learning the very special segment of For the Shabbos Table. This is for the Noach Shabbos Table 5786 edition, made possible by the Reuben family with a request from the Rebbeinu Shalom that they should be zeichet to a healthy ben zachar, a male child, and that they should have atzach and ruchnius and gashmius. We also are sponsored by a wonderful talmida of mine who is co-sponsoring this year with a tefillah that her two daughters should find their shidduch quickly and easily. The Torah tells us that Tonach HaTeva b'chodesh hashvi, the Teva rested in the 7th month, b'shiva aser, on the 17th of B'shiva aser yom lachodesh, on the 17th, b'chodesh hashvi, in the 7th month, that's the month of Tishrei. B'shiva aser yom lachodesh, on the 17th of the month, al horei Ararat. It rested on the mountain of Ararat. Now, we would think, okay, who cares where it rested? It's actually amazing. Without steering, it didn't bang into the mountain. It's a miracle on its own. But the location of the Teva is important because the Seder HaDoros, who was an ancestor of Rav Moshe Feinstein, the Seder HaDoros quotes in the name of the Shalshelas HaKabbalah that the remnants of the Teva are still there on Horei Ararat, on Mount Ararat. Now, the remnants of the Teva are not just an archaeological find. Throughout the generation, just like the Teva was the vehicle that saved Noach, that saved the Tzaddik Hadar, it would do so with certainty 2 more times in the history of the Jewish people. We know from the Medrash that Noach looked for a board that was 50 amas high. Now, who makes a gallows 50 amas high? That's like 100 feet into the sky. Who makes a gallows like that? But his advisors said, make it that when you eat with the king, you'll be able to see him hanging while you're eating in the palace. So he had to find a gallows 50 amas high, and one of his sons was the governor of Ararat. So his son took a plank from the ark, because the ark, one of its dimensions was 50 amas. So he took a plank from the ark, and they were planning to hang Mordechai on it. Of course, we know v'nahafachu, that Haman was hung. Turns out that Haman was hung on the plank of the ark. So the very vehicle that saved Noach would come to save Mordechai as well, and the Jewish people. But that's not the only time. You have to be a student of Shas. But if you're a student of Shas, you'll know that in Sanhedrin, Masechtas Sanhedrin, Daf Tzadik Vav, it tells us that another powerful Jew hater, Sancherib, came upon the remnants of the ark, and he took off a piece of the ark, and he bowed down to it. And the Gemara tells us that Sanherib, Melech Ashur, the mighty Sanherib was famous that whenever he went against a nation and he conquered it, he would move the people to another place. He didn't want the conquered people to have home team advantage, like we say in baseball parlance. So he would move them to another country. It was known, this is Sanherib, the king of Assyria. He found a remnant. He was a great Jew hater. He found a remnant of the ark, and he knew the story of the ark. And it says in the Gemara that he actually bowed down to it. It says, the Gemara is very expressive. The Gemara says that he said, Zeh Elokah Gadol Shehitzel Noach min hamabel. This is the great God that saved Noach from the flood. They put, their belief into physical things. They said, this is the great God that saved Noach from the flood. And his two sons, Adar Melech and Sharzar, when they heard him bowing down something to do with the Jews, they killed him. So Noach's ark, once again, was responsible for the destruction of one of the great Jew haters, as when he bowed down to it, his own sons, Sanherib's own sons, thought he lost his mind, and they killed him, which was a big Yeshua for Klal Yisrael. Now, to come further closer to home, Rav Shimon Seifer, that's the Sam Seifer's son, the Ksav Seifer's brother. Rav Shimon Seifer's son-in-law was a great, great tzaddik in Preshberg. His name was Rabbi Kiva Yosef Schlesinger. Rabbi Kiva Yosef Schlesinger wrote a sefer called Bris Olam. In his sefer, he reports that in the year 1883, they made an archaeological discovery on Har Ararat. They didn't call it Har Ararat. Under the snow, they discovered a boat of wood with the exact dimensions of the Teva in 1883. Now, today we have, and he mentions that it was reported in many of the newspapers and secular newspapers of the time. So today we have apparatus to search back to the old newspapers. So it's interesting that it is recorded in many, many, many newspapers in many countries. But someone has tried to deflect this by saying that it was an April Fool's joke promoted by the New Zealand Gazette. The fact is the article was dated in March and not in April. But they want to discredit it. But the fact that a tzaddik of the caliber of Rav Schlesinger reports it, and this is the reason why the Torah says that it's left on Hari Ararat, because it'll be there and it'll be proof to the legitimacy of the miracle of the flood. By the way, the miracle of the flood is reported in most of the ancient the Chinese culture has the story of the miracle of the flood. It's reported in most of the cultures. But I want to accentuate more the idea of how the actions of a tzaddik don't only have pertinence to the time that he lived, but many times it's also with an eye to the future. This is a Torah concept that we have, and I'm going to show you that even tzaddikim in contemporary time had this responsibility and this power. First, let's look at the Avos. When Yaakov sent the gifts to Esav, so he used psychological craft, and it says that when he sent the gifts, he told them, "V'revach tosimu bein eder le'eder." Give a space between one part of the gift and the next part of the gift. You know, you give one gift, it's one impression. But you give one, and then a little while later, another one, and then a little while later, another one. So he said, "V'revach tosimu bein eder le'eder." Give space between one part of the gift and the next. But the Medrash says there's something deeper over here. That when Yaakov was dealing with his arch enemy Esav, he had in mind also the suffering of his children throughout the ages. This is a Medrash in Bereshit Rabbah. And he prayed, "V'revach tosimu bein eder le'eder." Revach means relief. Revach v'atzola la-Yehudim, relief and saving for the Yehudim. He said, Hashem, you're going to give them times of inquisitions and holocausts, pogroms, and you're going to cause them to be expelled. But v'revach tosimu bein eder le'eder, between one problem and the next, give them a time, a relief period. We're in such a relief period. There was the Holocaust, and we're in a relief period. You know, there was the Spanish Inquisition, and then afterwards there was a relief period. There was the Polish Cossacks. There was a relief period. This is the Tefillah of Yaakov. That's why every morning we say in Lam Natseach, Yancha Hashem b'yom tzara, answer us Hashem in a time of distress. Right? Yisagevcha, give us saving. Shem Elikei Yaakov, the God of Yaakov. Why not the God of Avram, the God of Yitzchak? Because Yaakov prayed we should have relief. So you see, here's an example of the tzaddik not just praying for now when he's confronting Esav, but throughout the ages. We see this by Avram also. When Hashem was debating whether he should tell Avram about the destruction of Sodom. I mean, Avram is not living in Sodom, but why should he tell him? It's not Avram's responsibility. But he said, "Hamechasa ani me Avram." Should I cover this over from Avram? Asher ani oseh, what I'm going to do. V'Avram hayo yiyeh l'goy gadol, he's going to be a great nation. The connection isn't obvious. Because he's going to be a great nation, that's a reason to tell him about Sodom. What does that have to do with the Jewish people? To the contrary, get rid of Sodom. It's bad for the Jewish people. So all the Mefarshim say the same shot. That when Avram prayed for Sodom, although it didn't help Sodom, those prayers were used to help the Yidden throughout the generations. Avram hayo yiyeh l'goy gadol, he's going to be a great nation. And when he prays for Sodom, those prayers will not go unanswered. They will help his children. That's the idea that the tzaddik, he looks ahead. We find it also, we're going to learn soon in Bereshis, that when Avram traveled, Vayava Avram ba'aretz, Avram traveled through the land ad mekoim Shechem, until the place of Shechem. Rashi says he stopped in Shechem to pray that when Dinah would be violated and Shimon and Levi would attack the city of Shechem, that they should be successful. So again, we see that tzaddik has his eyes to the future. Now I'm going to tell you a much more contemporary story. It's a little bit unbelievable. But But this story is so well documented and is in so many svarim. I'll just tell you one of them. The Sefer Ish Elikim Koideshu told us Rabbeinu Aaron Mebel's. But it's also in a biography about the life of Belz. The great Rabbi Aaron Mebel's, the surname of Belz is Rekeach. The great Rabbi Aaron of Belz was in the midst of the turmoil of the Holocaust. And it was a directive from Hitler, Yamach Shemai V'Zichra L'Deroy Olam, to get rid of the Jewish leaders. That was a directive. And he fled, and he fled through Krakow and through Bachnia. And it's reported that while he fled, every night he took refuge in a different house. Every night he took refuge in a different house. Which is odd. You're taking refuge. You're successful. Every night he stayed in a separate house. And as reported by Hasidim galore, every house that Reb Aaron Rekeach spent in, those people survived the Holocaust. Every house. While all the houses around, the people died. But every house that Reb Aaron Rekeach stayed in, that's the power of a tzaddik for the future. And by the way, this is very well documented. Now, to segue into the same subject, it says in the Pasha, Ki liyomim oid shiva, Hashem told Noach, because in 7 days, Anoichi mamtir al haaretz, I'm going to rain down on the earth and destroy the earth. Ki liyomim oid shiva, in another 7 days. What were those 7 days about? It was 120 years, but ki liyomim oid shiva, in another 7 days. So Rashi says, because Mesushelach, the saintly Mesushelach, died, and Hashem postponed the destruction of the world 7 days for the honor of the mourning period of the tzaddik. That's what Rashi says. Which begs the question, in a wicked world that's about to be destroyed, what honor is it for the tzaddik to keep those people alive? They're not honoring the tzaddik. It says that Hashem kept the world 7 days in honor of the tzaddik. The mourning period of the tzaddik. What's the mourning? What's the honor? So the pashtus is, you see, it says, Gedoyla misa tzadikim, great is the death of the righteous, shemechaperes al hadar. Great is the death of the righteous, that it atones for a generation. People don't realize that during the miracle of Purim, one of the miracles is that when we fought the Amalekim, we didn't lose one man. In our battle with Amalek, we didn't lose one man. But one Jew died during Purim. A very heavy casualty. You see, Hasach was ferreting messages in a clandestine way between Mordechai and Esther. And Haman caught him. And Haman had him assassinated. Who was Hasach? Daniel. Daniel was the quintessential Eved Hashem, the tzaddik who was saved from a den of lions. The tzaddik who subsisted just on seeds when he served Nebuchadnezzar. Daniel, I told you, is the same letters as La Adonai. Daniel is an anagram of La Adonai, because he was the quintessential Eved Hashem. And yet he was killed. And it could be that that saved the generation. The generation that was Lahashmid, Larog, La'abed, Eskola Yehudim. The Misa of a tzaddik is mechaper on the door. Of course, they also fasted 72 hours. They got together, like Knesses Kol Yehudim. But Daniel's death helped. And therefore, in honor of Mesushelach, to show the power of a tzaddik, not only did Mesushelach save this wicked generation as long as he was alive, you see, Mesushelach didn't deserve to be incarcerated in the boat. He was too big of a tzaddik. But as long as he lived, there couldn't be a flood. One man can save a generation. Now, I want to tell you that's not the first time that we have this idea, that one man can save a generation. When Moshe Rabbeinu sent the Meraglim to spy out Eretz Yisrael, he told them to look, Hayesh bo eitz. Is there a tree? That's a queer thing to say. Hayesh bo eitz. So what he was saying is, see if there's a tzaddik living amongst them that would protect them like an eitz. And Rashi tells us he was referring to a specific person. He was referring to the righteous Eiv. But they came back and reported that Eiv died. Some say that that was the funerals that they saw, because they were having multiple funerals for Eiv. But Moshe Rabbeinu knew if there was one tzaddik, it could have stopped them, even though they were all wicked. One tzaddik could have stopped them from destroying Canaan. Just like one tzaddik, Mesushelach, stopped the world from being destroyed until he died, and even 7 days afterwards. We're going to have this in next week's parsha again. Rav Miller said, I don't know what the source is, but Rav Miller said that there were 3 million people in the 5 cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. Yet Hashem told Avram if there was 10 tzaddikim, he wouldn't kill them. 3 million people. 10 tzaddikim. And this is one of the reasons why we have a bracha in Shemona Esrei 3 times a day, where we daven for ala tzaddikim v'ala chasidim. We say, Baruch atah Hashem, mish'on u'miftach la tzaddikim. Because tzaddikim protect us. They save us. There's a pasuk in the parsha. I'm talking a lot. I'm getting carried away. I want to say some more things. I made a bracha already. Shayfech dam ha'adam ba'adam dama yeshafech. One who spills the blood of man, his blood will be spilled. Right? Capital punishment. Because man was made in the image of God. So if you spill the blood, you murder a person, you're harming the Tzelem Elikim, the image of God. Now, it would seem to be superfluous, Shayfech dam ha'adam ba'adam dama yeshafech. It could have just said, Shayfech dam ha'adam, if you spilled the blood of man, dama yeshafech, the murderer's blood should be spilled. Now, you could say, maybe simply, that Shayfech dam ha'adam ba'adam is telling us that if you spill the blood of the man, ba'adam dami yashavach, he should be executed by the human court, not just by the hand of heaven. Could be. But I saw a fascinating shot by Rabbi Yonasan Eibschitz. Rabbi Yonasan Eibschitz says there were a cat of people that insisted on being vegetarians because they said you can't kill an animal because humans come back as a reincarnation in an animal. We spoke about last week that they came back as a reincarnation in fish. This week we spoke about them coming back in a cat. So Rabbi Yonasan Eibschitz says there were those that believed that you can't shecht an animal because if you shecht an animal, you're killing a gilgul. So therefore, to preclude this, it says shayfech dam ha'adam ba'adam. Only if you split the blood of man in a man. There's no problem with slaughtering an animal. There's no problem with having chicken soup. There's no problem with having a good tilapia, a good flounder, because the only problem is the tzelem elikim. The tzelem elikim is only in man. Killing something else, it's not your cheshbon if there's a gilgul. And that's the tikkun for the gilgul. It's only shayfech dam ha'adam ba'adam if it's in man, not if it's in an animal. You see how you have to learn every word? But the Al-Shech HaKadosh, this is very important. This is very instructive. You know, we learn about how the Torah is nidreshes b'shivim panim, 7 different ways, and on 4 different planes, pshat, remez, soid, and drush. The Al-Shech HaKadosh and the great Akedah Yitzchak say something else. Shayfech dam ha'adam ba'adam means if you embarrass someone publicly and the blood drains from his face and makes him white. And that's pshat shayfech dam ha'adam, when you spill the blood of man ba'adam, in the man, by causing his face to become white from embarrassment. Dama yishafek, that's considered like murder. That's the Yiddish belief that amal b'mpnei chavera b'rabim ein lo chelek l'olam haba. I used to tell my children that they shouldn't listen to talk shows on the radio. And they would say to me, what's so bad about a talk show? What's so bad? I said, these people embarrass the callers on 50,000 watts. Listen to hundreds of thousands of people, or tens of thousands of people. And they embarrass them. What a stupid question. What a stupid comment. By us, it says, Hamal b'pnei chavera b'rabim ein lo chelek l'olam haba. If you embarrass someone publicly, myriads, habitually, you lose your afterlife. That's why, by the way, the word Bereshis is an anagram for Yorei Boishis, fear of embarrassment. Don't embarrass people. Now the clock is ticking, but I didn't say enough things. I want to tell you one more thing. I want to thank again the Rubin family, this wonderful woman who is sponsoring these shiurim. Also, I want to tell my Olam that we've broken multiple shiurim now, just on TorahAnytime.com, the 1,000 viewer range. We've broken already 1,000 views. If you want to sponsor one of these shiurim, 718-916-3100, rmmwsi@aol.com. Ela told us Noach ish tzadik tamim. We talked about how Noach was a titled man. But right away, now I want to talk about the 2 accolades, tzaddik and tamim. Now in other shiurim I've explained that ish tzaddik When we call somebody a tzaddik, it usually alludes to two traits. The first is one who combats his Yetzer Hara, or what we call pitpeit b'yitzro. And that's why Yosef was called Yosef HaTzadik, because the great temptress, the wife of Potiphar, changed 150 times a day for him. She was an amazing temptress. And Yosef warded it off. He combated his Yetzer. When we combat our Yetzer successfully, we're being a tzaddik. The other definition of tzaddik is somebody who supports others. As the Gemara tells us in Bava Basra, there was a charity provider called Binyamin HaTzadik. And we know that Yosef was Zon V'chilkel Kol Ha'olam. He supported the whole world in the time of the famine. So that's another definition of tzaddik. And they were both true of Noach. Noach was a tzaddik because he was the only one ever to emulate his creator to be zon the whole world. Because during his lifetime, in the 1 year in the Teva, he supported the whole world. That's why he was a tzaddik. He also combated his Yetzer and didn't succumb to the immorality and the theft that was all around him. However, what I want to share with you now, since we talked about bells earlier, I want to share with you a thought from the great Rabbi Yisachar Dov Mibelz, a descendant of Rav Aaron. The great Rabbi Yisachar Dov Mibelz, Tzadik L'Bracha, Schus Yagan Aleinu, he said that what's tzaddik and what's tamim. So he quotes an Arizal, a fascinating Arizal. The Arizal says that the pasuk tells us Hanistorois LaHashem Elokeinu V'aniglois Lanu Levanenu Ad Olam. That which is hidden is to Hashem, and that which is revealed is for us and our children. So the Arizal says a fascinating pshat. He says, Hanistoros, that which is hidden from people, our love of God, our fear of God, our feelings of humility, that which is hidden from people, we shouldn't publicize. People don't have to know how God-fearing we are, how much we love Hashem. Hanistaros LaHashem Elokeinu. Keep that hidden. But v'aniglois, the things that we do that are anyway public, what we do publicly, it's good to be mefarsing, because our children and our descendants have to learn from it. So hanistaros, what's hidden, LaHashem Elokeinu, we should keep hidden. V'aniglois, but that which we do anyway openly, we should publicize it. Lanu levanenu, that we should make it, impress it upon our children. And therefore he says, tamim, a tamim is the limbs, because a carbon that's tamim means the limbs aren't blemished. Tamim are things that we do openly. Tzaddik are things that are hidden in the recesses of our mind and our heart. And he says Noach was both a tzaddik in a hidden and also a tamim in his actions. And he says that's why we'll see that in next week's parsha, before telling Avram that he's going to have Yitzchak, he told him, "V'salek lefanai ve'yei samim." Walk before me and be open, be tamim in your ma'asim. Why? Because you're going to have a son, and you're going to have to set an example. Wow, it's already 34 minutes. We went over a little bit. I want to thank you all for joining us. Wish you a wonderful Shabbos. And remember, if you only listen to this share, for the Shabbos table, know that there's also Noach Gems, a much longer share. Thank you for joining us, and have a wonderful Shabbos.